I'm Jane Secker, and this is episode 9 of StoryCast 21. In 2007, a shooting in the UK Midlands sparked a war between two biker gangs, so serious that 13 years on, members of both gangs refused to speak about it. But in this instalment of StoryCast 21, one former gang member has agreed to speak with us, thereby giving us access to this story. Because of fears for his safety, we're using an actor to voice his testimony. This is the UK Biker Wars.
My name is Darren Little, and on Sunday, August the 12th, 2007, I had a phone call from the Sky News desk saying that there'd been a shooting on the M40 motorway near Warwick. I got there as quickly as I could. It was a lovely summer's day. Lots of people out of their cars all over the motorway. It was a very strange scene. And all of us knew that the Bulldog Bash had been going on that weekend. It was a massive, massive event. And this was attended by Hells Angels from all over the world. And there was some kind of a score settling or a feud that had gone on. 7 members of the Outlaws murdered Hells Angel Gerry Tobin on the M40 in 2000. We learned that the biker who was shot was called Gerry Tobin. He was 35 years old, a Hells Angel and a mechanic from South London. And the police very, very quickly arrested a number of members of the Outlaws, a motorcycle group which was the sworn enemy of the Hells Angels. And there seemed little doubt among outlaw bikers just why Gerry Tobin was shot.
Gerry Tobin got shot because the Hells Angels had taken over a smaller club's rally, the Bulldog Bash in the Midlands, in outlaw country. I think after a few meetings, a few cross words, they decided we're going to have to do something about this. And that would have come from America. They would have said, you've got to do something about this.
This was a murder which was audacious, really. These members of the Outlaws had spent a number of days planning this hit. It's thought that they were travelling at 90 miles an hour at the time. Gerry Tobin was in the middle lane of the motorway, and the car with the Outlaws in was in the outside lane, and they wound the windows down, and the 2 shots were fired.
He was shot because he was wearing a patch. They didn't single him out by name, but you live that life and sooner or later something like that's going to happen.
What started with a phone call for me to go and cover a story on a quiet Sunday afternoon, would lead me into a world that I had no idea of. There were a number of people, both from the biker fraternity itself and also within law enforcement, who started to tip me off.
A lot of that violence, it comes down the chain. You might see a reprisal happen to you for something that happened in another country. It's really personal.
One of them was a biker that we'll call, for the sake of this, Ed, just to protect his identity. He was a 1%er biker, and he was someone who knew an awful lot about the biker groups.
The Outlaws only exist in this country because of the Hells Angels. The Hells Angels were bullying a lot of clubs in the Midlands, so the clubs got together, called themselves the Midland Outlaws, and eventually got sanctioned by the American Outlaws. There's the old story that back in the 60s, when you had the war veterans coming home, there was a big party in a town in California which descended into drunken anarchy. And the American Motorcycle Association said 99% of our members are law-abiding citizens who ride and race motorcycles. So, of course, these people who wanted no part of that mainstream motorcycle culture called themselves the 1%ers. I suppose there isn't an expectation of criminality because I know loads of guys who are as straight as anything, but there's an expectation of being a bad boy. The Hells Angels view it as a sort of gangster badge of pride.
As I dug deeper, I found out that actually Violence between the Hells Angels and various biker groups around the world had been going on for quite some time. So far, the major flashpoints have been in Europe, Australia and Canada, with tit-for-tat murders, beatings and bombings of rival clubhouses. In June 2007, a rival biker gang were responsible for detonating a bomb outside a clubhouse of the Hells Angels in a Sydney suburb. And in Canada, in Quebec, there was a huge rivalry going on throughout the late 90s and into the early 2000s between the Hells Angels and various other biker gangs. That left more than 160 people dead.
The Outlaws are at war with the Hells Angels. The Outlaws have murdered a member of the Hells Angels, and previously the Hells Angels have killed members of the Outlaws, just because they're rival gangs.
It's about camaraderie, brotherhood, like-minded people. Nowadays it's mainly 50-50 with ex-servicemen and people who've never served. It's not a deal breaker if you're the right sort of person. Your job or your background don't matter. As long as you can be where you need to be, answer the phone and live by that time schedule.
If law enforcement does tolerate something like the murder of Gerry Tobin, if you do that, you run the risk of doing the same as happened in Australia and has happened in other parts of the world, where this has been allowed to continue and escalate.
As the investigation went deeper into what had happened surrounding Gerry Tobin, the authorities began to label all of the biker gangs, but particularly the Hells Angels and the Outlaws, as serious organised crime group. And then we find out that the most powerful outlaw outside of North America is based out of North Wales, out of Colwyn Bay, and is a man called Dink. According to the police, this man is the head of one of Europe's fastest growing organised crime groups. I was just fascinated to find out about him, find out about the structure of the Outlaws. So within 6 months of Gerry Tobin being shot on the M40, the Outlaws and the Hells Angels were at it again in the Midlands. This time at Birmingham Airport. Then around 30 Outlaws and Hells Angels took part in a mass brawl. Members of both groups had found themselves on the same flight back into Birmingham from Alicante. They both made calls to their people on the ground in the Midlands to tell them to meet them when they landed at the airport. Some had hammers, knives, even a meat cleaver. In total, 30 bikers assembled in the arrivals hall at Birmingham Airport and started attacking each other. Now, miraculously, no one was killed. West Midlands Police recently spent a reported £2 million on security for a trial of Angels and Outlaws after a mini riot at Birmingham Airport. This trial took place amid massive security. It cost more than £2 million for the police. But ultimately, 4 Hells Angels and 4 Outlaws were arrested and subsequently found guilty, and this was happening in the early summer of 2009. But around about the time when the airport trial ended, I came across a number that I was told could be for Dink. It was so tantalising to get his number and to think that I had a chance of getting in touch with someone who'd never spoken, particularly for someone who was becoming ever more the focus of the police's attention. He's known as Dink and is the European and Asian president of the Outlaws Motorcycle Club, a group which is growing quickly. When I finally rang him, I think he swore, and he asked me how I got the number. And I said, well, you know, I just came by it. This was July 2009, 2 years after Tobin, and it's just over a year after the Birmingham Airport riot. And I said to him, we always hear from the Hells Angels, and we never hear from you guys. And I want to give you that opportunity to tell us about what you say, because the police are saying an awful lot of things about your organisation. The Hells Angels clearly are always talking to the media, and we never hear from you guys. And I want to hear what you've got to say. I want to hear your side of the story. And he sort of said, OK, fine. Yeah, let's do it.
A few words for level.
OK, give us your name first of all. He said that we would meet up at the Rock and Blues Festival in Derbyshire, which is their version of the Bulldog Bash.
Welly.
Warwickshire police claim the Outlaws and the Hells Angels are in a bitter and increasingly violent feud. So we hatched a plan, basically, that I would text my line manager every half an hour. Both are involved in drugs, prostitution, murder, extortion. And we had certain code words that I would text if we were okay, and code words that I would text if there was a problem.
All Rock Radio.
Yeah, say what, should we start that again and we'll do
well, this is just for our benefit. So they showed us in and they took us to a huge marquee, and there was a bar inside, there was music playing, and the place was full of outlaws.
Well, this show this year has gone really well.
And I was very nervous, I won't lie to you, because now we were kind of in the heart of their enormous festival. You have had licensing issues before, haven't you? And after about half an hour, Dink walked in. Presumably you prefer to be known as Dink?
Yeah.
Yeah? He had his Outlaw's jacket on, he was bare-chested underneath, tattoos all over him, relatively short and stocky, and he came over and shook my hand.
Yeah, go on then, mate.
I think it's actually my turn, sorry.
Yeah.
It was a case of how far can I go? I'm on your territory here. I'm aware that if I upset you, that we could have a problem. So what are your feelings towards the Hells Angels?
My feelings is just let them get on with what they're doing and we'll get on with what we're doing, you know.
Is there a feud?
Nah.
But they see events like happen with Gerry Tobin on the M40.
Yeah, these things happen. I don't, you know, Hitler was duly punished for it. Everybody knows that because it was on every newspaper, you know.
Did you know about that?
Well, obviously I went to the court case.
Prior to it happening?
No.
What was your feeling when you found out about it then?
Well, my feeling was it's a rather stupid thing to do. It just gives all the authorities and everything the ammunition they've just been looking for. You know? What can I say?
What's your attitude to them now?
You know, I mean, fundamentally in that conversation, Dink denied that he knew anything about the shooting of Tobin and actually said he thought it was a stupid thing to do at the time because it brought the police's attention onto the Outlaws.
Because, I mean, they say murder, prostitution, extortion, firearms, drugs.
What, they've done that, or us?
Yourselves.
Oh, right, I thought you was on about them then. Oh, no, look, if any of our lads have done anything wrong, we've been punished for it. You know, but any walks of life, any professional or any club, supporters or organisations, you can always get a few people who do things wrong. Well, if they get punished, they get punished. What can I say, you know? They've been punished, so.
He denied that they were an organised crime group. He made a joke about them being disorganised. And so he played a very straight bat.
Do you know any Hells Angels? Are you friends with any Hells Angels?
There's too many, I don't know too many outlaws, you know, so by the time I've gone round all of them, you know, I ain't got time for other things, but I don't dislike them or I just don't think about it, mate. It's just, whatever they do is entirely up to them and I wish them well.
But I mean, there does seem to be a catalogue of events of tit for tat. You know, we've had Birmingham Airport, we had Tobin, we've had any number in Europe.
What can I say, you know? These things happen.
I mean, do you defend yourselves?
But actually, at the time we spoke, the police were already looking at Dink, and they had started to look at the North Wales chapter of the Outlaws and their supply of drugs.
Are you worried at the police attitude? Because clearly they seem to be tightening up, they seem to have their focus on yourselves and the Hells Angels.
I suppose if they're picking on us, they're leaving someone else alone. You know what I mean?
Did they give you grief?
We did the interview and we put it out on the first day of the Bulldog Bash, which annoyed the Hells Angels. And then I got a call the following year, early the following year, saying that there was a case that the police were taking against Dink and 6 other outlaws to do with drugs offences. And that led me back to Dink in May 2010 to a small court in Carnarvon in North Wales. And at that point, I think he knew that
there was an inevitability about what had happened, and he was frustrated. And ultimately, Dink was jailed for 5 years.
7 members of the Outlaws murdered Hells Angel Gerry Tobin on the M40 in 2007, a crime that ultimately drew the police's attention to the motorbike gangs.
And he actually spoke to me quite early on about the fact that our interview had led the police to him. And I respectfully reminded him, actually, as he said in his interview with me the year earlier, that the thing that really led the police to the Outlaws and ultimately to this conviction that he got for the drug offence was the shooting of Gerry Tobin on the M40.
The men were sentenced to life in prison. All of them are still supported by the Outlaws.
In 2021, the surviving members of the Outlaws who carried out Gerry Tobin's murder remain in prison. One of them died in custody in 2019. Dink, whose real name is Stuart Dawson, he's now free again and remains the most powerful outlaw outside of North America. Violence among many UK biker gangs continues to simmer.
Dink and the Angels claim there is no feud, but both are well aware that whatever the truth, they now
The UK Biker Wars was written and produced by Rob Mulhern. Next time, we mark the 10th anniversary of Amy Winehouse's death with a unique insight into the singer's life.
She used to always say to me when I was like 9, 10, I'm going to sign you one day. Didn't even know what that meant. I was just like, okay, sure. And slowly it just kind of became kind of like a guardian angel, really, in a music way with Amy.